In the Middle Ages, there was no police force as we understand it today. No patrol cars, no detectives, no centralized authority trained to prevent crime. Yet law and order still existed. Justice was local, personal, and often brutal. Medieval society relied on fear, community pressure, and collective responsibility to keep control. Everyone was expected to participate. If a crime occurred, it was not only the criminal's problem, it was the community's responsibility. Towns and villages were bound together by mutual obligation. People knew each other. Strangers stood out immediately. Suspicion spread quickly. The first line of law enforcement was the local population itself. When a crime was discovered, a cry was raised. This was known as the hue and cry. Anyone who heard it was legally required to respond. Men dropped their work. Neighbors ran into the streets. Failure to join the chase could result in punishment. Justice depended on participation. Criminals were pursued by ordinary people, not professionals. If caught, they were restrained and brought before local authorities. Village elders, lords, or magistrates handled judgment. There was no investigation as we know it, no forensic evidence, no systematic questioning. Truth was determined through reputation, witnesses, and confession. A person's past mattered more than facts. Known troublemakers were easily condemned. Outsiders faced immediate suspicion. The local lord held immense power. He acted as judge, jury, and enforcer. His authority was absolute within his lands. Punishment was swift, public, unforgiving. Justice was meant to be seen. Fear replaced prevention. In towns, guilds played a role in maintaining order. Members were expected to control their own. Misconduct reflected on the entire group. Guild leaders enforced discipline internally. Church courts handled moral crimes. Blasphemy, adultery, heresy, and disorder were judged spiritually but punished physically. Sin and crime were often treated as the same thing. Trials were simple and dangerous. Oaths mattered more than evidence. Swearing before God was believed to bind the soul. Lying was thought to invite divine punishment. Ordeals were used to determine guilt. Fire, water, and pain became tools of judgment. If someone survived, God had spoken. If they did not, guilt was assumed. Prisons were rare. They were not places of long-term confinement. They existed only to hold the accused before punishment. Justice was immediate. Mercy was unpredictable. Social status mattered. A noble accused of crime faced different judgment than a peasant. Wealth could buy forgiveness. Poverty invited suspicion. Without police, order relied on fear, faith, and community pressure. People obeyed because they knew what happened to those who did not. Punishment was a warning, not a correction. Law existed to protect stability, not fairness. Without police, medieval justice depended entirely on visibility and fear. Crime could not be hidden for long. Houses were close together. Lives were lived in public. Privacy barely existed. Everyone watched everyone else. Rumors acted faster than any patrol. A suspicious action could turn into an accusation within hours. And accusation was often enough. Once named, a person had to prove innocence, not guilt. There was no presumption of innocence. Silence was dangerous. Defending oneself too strongly could look like defiance. Justice moved quickly because delay weakened authority. Local courts were simple. A lord, bailiff, or council listened to witnesses and decided. Witnesses were neighbors, rivals, or relatives. Personal conflicts shaped verdicts. Truth was flexible. Reputation mattered more than facts. A respected man could survive suspicion. A poor or disliked person rarely could. Collective punishment was common. If a criminal escaped, the entire village could be fined. Communities were pressured to police themselves. This created tension and fear. Helping the wrong person could destroy you. Harboring a suspect was a serious crime. Even feeding them could be punished. Justice turned neighbors into enforcers, and fear into loyalty. Informants thrived in this system. Denunciation became a tool of survival. People accused others to protect themselves or to settle grudges. False accusations destroyed lives. Once arrested, the accused faced interrogation. Torture was legal under certain conditions. Pain replaced evidence. Confession ended uncertainty. Whether true or false did not matter. Once confessed, punishment was inevitable. Refusing to confess meant more suffering. Trials ended quickly. Punishments followed immediately. Stocks, whipping, mutilation, exile, execution. Justice did not wait. This speed created obedience. People obeyed not because they trusted the law, but because they feared its randomness. Church and state worked together. Sin became crime. Crime became sin. Moral behavior was enforced physically. Blasphemy, gossip, disobedience, and nonconformity were threats to order. Without police, belief itself was policed. Law followed hierarchy. Nobles were judged by peers. Commoners were judged publicly. Punishment reinforced class boundaries. Equality did not exist. Justice protected power, not people. Yet this system endured for centuries, not because it was fair, but because it worked. Fear was effective. Community pressure was constant. Authority was visible. The absence of police did not mean absence of control. It meant control was everywhere, in every neighbor's eyes, in every whispered rumor, in every public punishment. Medieval justice did not need uniforms or patrols. It lived in fear. It lived in faith. It lived in the certainty that disobedience would not be forgiven. Law and order survived without police because society itself became the police. And in that world, there was nowhere to hide. Over time, this system reshaped how people thought about justice itself. Law was no longer something external. It was internalized. People learned to control themselves before authority ever appeared. Fear did the work that police would one day do. Obedience became instinct. The threat of punishment hovered constantly, even in moments of peace. There was no clear line between crime and suspicion. A person did not need to act wrongly to be punished. They only needed to be seen as dangerous. Justice without police thrived on uncertainty. Uncertainty made people careful. Careful people were obedient. In this world, trust eroded quietly. Neighbors smiled in public and watched each other in private. Friendship had limits. Compassion carried risk. Helping the wrong person could destroy a family. Silence became protection. Neutrality became survival. The absence of police did not mean freedom. it meant constant vigilance. Every individual became both potential criminal and potential judge. Communities learned to sacrifice individuals to protect themselves. One punishment reassured hundreds. One execution restored order. This logic justified everything. Cruelty was framed as necessity. Injustice was reframed as stability. Those who suffered were described as unfortunate, not wronged. Their pain became acceptable because it served the greater order. Over generations, this shaped morality itself. People believed the law was harsh because life was harsh. They believed mercy invited chaos. They believed fear kept famine, war, and rebellion at bay. And sometimes they were right. But the cost was invisible until it was too late. Creativity withered. Dissent vanished. Truth bent toward power. Justice stopped asking questions. It stopped caring about reasons. It demanded obedience and silence. Without police, there was no barrier between authority and daily life. Power was immediate, personal, unavoidable. There was no appeal to a distant system, no higher institution to protect the weak. Only local judgment, shaped by fear and interest. Once condemned, a person disappeared socially before they disappeared physically. Their name faded. Their family carried the stain. Justice did not end with punishment. It continued in memory, in whispers, in exclusion. This is why medieval law endured without police for centuries. Not because it was just, but because it was total. It occupied every space where freedom might have grown. The modern world relies on institutions. The medieval world relied on fear embedded in daily life. Both enforce order, but only one pretends to protect the individual. In the Middle Ages, law did not exist to serve people. People existed to serve law. And when society itself becomes the enforcer, there is no refuge, no appeal, no escape. Justice worked without police because it did not need them. Fear walked the streets instead, and fear never slept.